Hi everyone, it's Tox from CritsHappen.com. Thanks for watching and welcome back. Today I've got a critical review of City of Gears. This is an award-winning game from thegamecrafter.com designed by Chris Leder, or Leder, I'm not too sure, apologize if I slaughtered that. But it won last year's Best Steampunk Challenge. The idea? To design the best steampunk themed game. Now we're going to review the base set. There is an expansion set available. And also of note, the artwork that you'll see on some of the tiles is not the final artwork. There's actually been a more recent update to it with a little bit of shifts and movements of some of the icons, which we'll explain during gameplay. But for now, here's what you need to know. In 1912, Sir Esmond Funglass created the City of Gears. It was going to be the shining example of man and machine combined together. However, something went terribly awry, and the city was never finished. And now you, as one of the players, along with your other venture capitalists, are going to enter the remains of the City of Gears. You're going to explore and uncover the secrets. You're going to use your automatons to gain advantages, and you're going to go in and take ownership of certain areas of the city. And you're even going to have to deal with gear or POG management as well. There's quite a bit to this small little game, and it's not what it may appear on the surface. So come with me, grab your Steam, and more importantly, grab your bombs, and let's jump in to the City of Gears. So here you see the starting setup for a 4-player game of City of Gears. Now in the game City of Gears, you're going to have 16 different tiles that represent different areas of the city. These are shuffled randomly and placed out randomly every game. So just from the get-go, there's a lot of different options that are going to make up the actual city. In addition, each player gets a factory board. Now, you'll notice that around each of the tiles, there are 2 little half gear marks that will connect to the other tiles. We'll talk about that in a second. But more importantly, there are 2 half gear marks at the top of your factory that connect you into your first piece of the City of Gears. There are also 4 starting upgradable abilities that are on your factory. So every player starts the game being able to roll 2 dice. They can use 1 Steam result on those dice as a gear. They can get 2 movement points for their automatons, which are these little guys here in their factory. And they can use 1 bomb to destroy a worker or 2 bombs to destroy a gear. We'll get into that in a second. In addition, everyone gets a joystick that they can use to count their victory points as they gain them throughout the game. Now, aside from all of that, each player also gets a handful of these colored little pogs. Now, what are these going to be used for? Well, we'll explain that in a second because there's a very big part of the game. To start off the game, there's a bag of gears, and inside this bag are going to be pogs. You have to, when you get the game, put stickers on these, but one side is going to have a gear, and the other side is going to have an upgrade. And they match the colors on your factory. So there's purple, orange, yellow, and red. Purple is for dice, orange is for resources, yellow is for movement points, and red is for bombs and combat and destruction. To start the game, let's say the blue player was going to be the first player. Each player goes around and picks 1 pog out of the bag. So in this case, I look at it as the blue player and I say, for 1 Steam, I can swap any 2 workers in the city. Or I can use it as a gear. Now I don't show my opponents what the upgrade is unless I'm going to choose to use it as an upgrade. Now of note, once you upgrade something, if you want to upgrade it again, you have to destroy the old upgrade. So upgrades don't stack. So in this case, the blue player says, you know what? I want to use this to connect my first piece to the City of Gears. They would flip over the first piece of the city. They would put down on either one of these 2 connection points, one of their POG, and then they would take their color POG and put it on top of it to show that that's their link. That's very important as the game progresses, and we'll get into that in a second. Once you've developed a link between areas, you can then use your workers to move out into the city. But again, as this is the very beginning part of the game, we don't have those actions available to us. The very first turn of the game, all everyone does is go around and pick 1 gear out of the bag, or 1 pog out of the bag. Now, whenever you flip over a tile the very first time, you get 1 victory point. So the blue player would get 1 victory point. This one is the bank. The bank is a wealth card, which is represented by the coin, and if I have a worker on it, I get to roll an additional die. In addition, you'll see in the piped area here, it says Steam. For each wealth tile your workers currently occupy, including this one, gain 1 victory point. What does that mean and how do we use it? We'll get into that in a second. Let's go around and we'll pick out a gear for every other player. The red player would go next, and the red player would get 4 movement points as an upgrade for his automatons or the gear. That could be really good. So we'll go ahead and put that as an upgrade from our 2 movement points to 4. That's going to give him a lot of flexibility in the future. The yellow player would then go, and they would have the option of rolling 3 dice as an upgrade or using a gear. So they're going to go ahead and use that as an upgrade as well. And then the final green player will go ahead and move, and he'll take over, and he'll have Steam results can be counted as movement or gear. So he'll go ahead and use that as an upgrade as well, because that's not going to hurt him to lose any possible options in using Steam for gear. It just expands on what the base option is, which is Steam can be used as a gear, or in his case now, Steam can be used as a gear or a worker movement point. So now that the first round is done, the blue player starts again, and they're going to take their dice. Now there's 4 that come with the game, and on each side you have an option for either a blank roll, a steam roll, a bomb roll, or a gear roll. And each one of those is going to give you different resources at the beginning of your turn. So the first thing you do is you look at how many dice can I roll. Well, I have 2 on my factory. If I had a worker on the bank, I could roll a 3rd, but I don't have a worker on the bank. So I would only have 2 dice. So I would roll those, and I would get a gear, and I would get a steam. Now then I can use those in any fashion I want. This is one of the more unique things. During your turn, after you roll your production dice, you can perform actions and move your workers in any possible option combination that you want. Now, what kind of actions can you take? Well, if you rolled a gear, you can draw a gear and place one. The thing is you can only do that once each turn. Additionally, you can move your workers, you can activate steam powers, and you can sabotage if you roll bombs. Now in this case, we didn't roll any bombs, so we'll talk about that in a second. So since I have a gear, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reach into my bag and I'm going to get another gear out. And this one gives me an orange option for steam can be counted as movement or as a gear, which is what the green player had gotten, or a gear. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say I want to use that to move out into the field a little bit more. Or I could start to gain control. Now what I mean by that is, even though I already have a connection here, I could go ahead and put my steam or my gear right here and take control of this. Now what does control mean? Well, at the end of the game, you're going to look at how many gears people have connected to each tile to see who owns it. The person with the most colored tiles or most colored gears connected to the tile will own that and get the victory points at the bottom. So in this case, the bank is worth 3 victory points. So it would be very beneficial for me to own that at the end of the game. In the event of a tie, let's say I had 2 blue, 2 red, 2 yellow, and 2 green here at the end of the game, the ties are broken by the number of automatons that are on that city tile as well. So if we each had 2 of the same colored tiles, but I had 3 automatons on there and everyone else had 1, then I would still gain control of that. So now I've used my gear, I can now use my steam if I want, or I can move my workers. And I think what I'm going to do is move my workers. I have 2 worker points to move. I'm going to take 1 automaton from my factory and put him onto the bank. Each square is a movement place. So now that I have my guy on there, I can use this ability, which says for each wealth tile your workers currently occupy, gain 1 victory point. So I could use my steam to gain 1 victory point from that tile. That could be the end of my turn, or if I wanted, I could bring a second automaton out and have 2 on there. Now, it doesn't matter how many automatons you have on here, you can only use that ability once per turn. It's not like you get to use it once for each automaton you have out there. Although we did try that once as an optional variant, I highly suggest don't doing that. It made the game absolutely ridiculously dumb. But Basically what you're going to do is you're going to continue going around the board. So it'd be the red player's turn right now. He would have 2 dice. He would take his 2 dice and roll, and he would get 2 steam. Now, this is kind of challenging because he doesn't have the ability to move out into the City of Gears yet. But remember that you can use steam as gear from your factory. So he could use 1 steam to go ahead and dig in and get out a gear from the bag. And this is cool. He has the option to roll 2 dice and re-roll 1, or use it as a gear. Well, he wants to start moving out, and since he used his first token as an upgrade, he's going to go ahead and flip over the first city option that he has here. So he has the scrapyard, and again he puts his color pog on the gear. The scrapyard is both a mechanical building, kind of like the wealth building for the bank, and allows you to re-roll a die if your worker's on there at the beginning of the next turn. Now this says at the start of your turn, you may remove one of your workers from this tile to gain one of the following: a gear, a steam, or a bomb. That's really helpful. Now since he was the first person to flip that tile over, the red will go ahead and gain 1 victory point, so he's now 1 behind blue and 1 ahead of yellow and green. And then he still has his other steam to go ahead and use. He can't use this ability twice, so he's not going to be able to use that other steam, but he will use his 4 movement points to move all 4 of his automatons out here. Now again, it doesn't matter how many you have on there in terms of number of automatons to using the ability on the building. You just have to have 1 automaton on there to use that tile's ability. But it helps you to have more automatons in the city, because the only way to destroy an opponent's automaton, or more importantly, to destroy an opponent's linked gear, is to have an automaton on that area, roll the bombs necessary, and blow that up. So on my next turn as red, if I wanted to use this ability to go ahead and get a bomb, that's great, but unless I have an automaton near somebody or able to get to somebody on that turn, I'm not going to be able to blow them up. And play will continue throughout the game with people exploring, uncovering, and linking together all the different areas inside of the city. So one thing to note is that once something is connected, it's connected. It means that you can move freely between things. Let's say, for example, this was the setup that we had after a couple of rounds of gameplay, where green had connected the aerodrome, the power plant, and the bank, so they had a line going here. The blue player had just connected the bank, and the red player had just connected the scrapyard. It doesn't mean that the red player can't move on to the power plant because he doesn't have a red link there. Once a link is established, you can move around to anywhere on the board. But again, the links are really important because at the end of the game, the person with the most of their color link on a tile is going to own that tile. And in the event of a tie, you're going to want your automatons on there to break the tie. And you'll see different places are worth different victory points. Some are worth 3, some are worth 2, some are worth 1. But they all have a highly variable impact to the game. There's some that are going to be science buildings like the munitions lab and the laboratory. There's going to be some that will require you to have workers on different types. So like the bank told you, the more wealth tiles that you have people on, the more bonus points you're going to get when you utilize that. So for an example, in this layout, the other building that has wealth is the museum. So if someone had connected that museum out there and blue was able to get a player out there, they would have an automaton out here, they would have an automaton out here, and every time they used that steam, they would get 2 victory points for being on having their automatons on 2 wealth tiles. There's a lot of options that come up throughout this, as you can imagine. But I'm sure you're asking yourself, well, this is cool, and there's a lot of things that are moving around and a lot of different options, but how does the game end? Well, there's 2 possible ways for the game to end. When you run out of pogs and there's no more gears to draw, the game can end. But in addition, if one player connects all of the City of Gears with their color, the game can end. Now that may look highly challenging and highly confusing, but it is actually quite simple. We've had it happen many, many times, and actually strategically can be a really good way when you're ahead to go ahead and end the game and finish it off. So for example, if I had this layout right here, where green had moved out into the city so much and developed so many different areas that they had connected every possible option for them, this would end the game. Because they would end up, well, one more pog would end the game actually, we'll put that right there. They would have a connection from their factory to the aerodrome, from the aerodrome to the munitions lab, to the museum, to the train station, from the factory to the aerodrome to the power plant to the scrapyard, from the factory to the aerodrome to the power plant to the bank to the laboratory and to the Tesla farm, and that would actually end the game. So after each turn, when you perform your actions of drawing a gear and placing one, moving workers, activating steam powers, and sabotaging, the last thing you do is check for endgame. If there's no more gears in the bag, game over. But if someone's been able to successfully connect all of the pieces of the city of gear together to their factory, then they're going to go ahead and end the game. And again, depending on your victory points, this could be a really, really strategic way of finishing off the game and ending it so that your opponents can't catch up to you. But even though the game ends, doesn't mean that you're going to win the game. Because then, once that's over, you have to go around tile to tile and count up who has the most colored pogs on each tile, and whoever does gets the victory points. And again, the automatons will break the tie. As you can see, it's a very colorful game. It seems complex at first, but once you sit down and start to learn the different cards that will make up the City of Gears, it is actually a very smooth, very well-oiled machine, so to speak, of getting your automatons out into the city, gaining advantages both on your factory and from the abilities of the cards that you will have your automatons on, gaining as many victory points as possible, and wreaking absolute havoc on your opponents with the bombs. The bombs, in fact, are some of the more fun pieces of the game. And again, like I said before, if you wanted to destroy links, you have to have a worker on that area and have to have rolled a bomb. If you roll a bomb, you can destroy an automaton. If you roll 2 bombs, then you can destroy a link and remove it from the game completely. It doesn't go back into the bag, it's completely removed from the game. Because again, when the bag is out of gears, then that's the end of the game. It is a highly interactive, a highly colorful, and a highly option-providing game for strategy and depth. But let's take a look at what we think of City of Gears. So that's City of Gears. Component-wise, it's really well done. TheGameCrafter.com always surprises me in how well they put together their games for people. Now, that said, the one thing you would want to know is that these square tiles have square corners. And because of square tiles have square corners, of course they do. The square tiles, because of that, could take some abuse if you're not careful with them on the corners. But overall, the quality of the actual card is really, really good. The meeples and pogs and tokens are pretty much meeples and pogs and tokens, although it is kind of nice that these are stickered tokens on each side. It does take a little bit to put together because when you get the game, you have just the stickers and you have to place the stickers on these. But that's a one-time heavy lift, and from there it's pretty much good to go and you're ready to start playing. The only thing I could probably complain about from a component standpoint, and this is really more quantity than quality, is I wish that there were more dice in the game. You only get 4 in the base game, and there's times when, depending on how you have your automatons set up in the city, you could be rolling 7 or 8 dice, and re-rolling quite a bit too. So it would have been nice to have maybe 7 or 8 dice just included in the game, so you could have that, but otherwise you just have to make sure you keep track of the resources that you gain and keep as you roll the dice each turn. Now, in terms of gameplay, this is a really deeply strategic game, and that honestly shocked me. When I first looked at the game online and I read the rules, I was thinking to myself, well, it looks pretty cool, looks interesting, it's uniquely themed, it's steampunk, yay for that. But I started to think to myself, it doesn't look like there's a lot of depth. It doesn't look like there's a lot of options. It looks like connect a gear, move your guy out, gain an advantage, and rack up your victory points. But in reality, the fact that there's only 16 tiles in the game, and the fact that you're only going to use 9, and they're always in a different layout when you put them out there randomly, and then the fact that you have the dice that you roll to get resources and the option of gear pogs being upgrades or connectivity really, really, really presents you with a lot of options on your turn. Now, it's not so many options that you're going to be sitting there like scratching your head going, well, what do I do? Do I move? Do I connect? Do I blow something up? How do I use my steam? It's not going to leave you struggling turn on turn. but you're going to be presented with a lot of options around, do I want to maximize for total efficiency on my turn, or do I want to plan for future turns? And that is really, really where this game shines. There is a lot of social interaction between, do you connect and move out? Do you start to become aggressive and get near your opponent's links and their gears and their automatons to potentially get bombs and blow them up? And do you want to be combative, or do you want to be more reclusive and just try and rack up victory points? There's so many different paths to victory and so many different shifts throughout the turns in the game that it really, really comes together well. In fact, one of our players, when we were playing one of our games, said, you know what I really like? I love the fact that it feels like, especially, and this isn't a 4-player game, I feel like this is an ever-evolving, shifting gear all on its own. And I asked him what he meant by that, and he said, well, I take my turn and I maximize my points. It then shifts to you. You take your turn and you do whatever you want to do. Maybe you decide to get random and come out and go aggressive, or maybe you decide to just huddle up and take care of the tiles that are near you. And then the third player goes and they come out and they blow up what you just decided to do, and they're coming over to my direction. He said, what I thought I was going to do by the time my turn ended is totally different by the time it gets around to me, and I can interact with each player as they go around and see how they're working to plan out my next turn. So it feels like a constant gear shifting around to come back to you, and then you move and do your stuff. It doesn't feel as though you're playing any kind of solo type game where you just play your turn and wait for everyone else. There's a lot of things that are going to happen throughout that, and also when these bombs come up, they can drastically change the game. You could have an automaton stranded out in the middle of nowhere because somebody totally disconnects the gears to that area and you can't get them off until you get out and build another gear link to there. So there's a lot of different things that can happen. Not so much that it's overbearing, but just enough to give you enough options to make the game highly strategic, and more importantly, a lot of replay value. This is a game that when you're done, you just want to play it again, whether you won or whether you lost. And the other really nice thing about it, we have yet to have a blowout runaway victory. In fact, our largest margin of victory has only been by 7 points. So there is a lot of close games, a lot of close, tight things happening. Now, honestly, the first time you play, it's going to be a little bit of kind of figuring it all out and seeing how it all works and gets together. But once you become familiar with the tiles and the options available to you to use your resources, it does move a lot quicker and a lot smoother. Like we said, a 2-player game, about 30 minutes, 4-player game, 45 minutes to about 60 minutes. Overall, from an experience, it is a light steampunk theme, but just enough to make it enjoyable for a steampunk fan or for just a strategic board game fan. It gives you the elements of worker placement, it gives you the elements of upgrade, and I want to say hand management, but really more factory management and how your upgrades are going to help you. And then of course the randomness of dice. I mean, let's face it, everybody likes rolling dice. And when you can roll a dice and get a bomb and blow something up, it's even more fun. So overall, at the end of the day, City of Gears gets a crit from Crits Happen. We're looking forward to getting a hold of the expansion for this one as well and seeing how that impacts the game. But just the base game on its own is super fun, is going to provide a lot of replayability. And whether you're a fan of steampunk looking for something new and different, or whether you're not and you're just looking for a unique kind of game to play, this is definitely a game we would highly recommend to check out. We'd like to thank Chris and thegamecrafter.com. They actually provided this copy for us to review for you guys. If you have any questions, let us know. We'd love to hear what you think as well. Have you looked at this and now you're more interested? Have you not seen it before and you're like, oh, steampunk? Or have you never heard of the Game Crafter and now you're going to be delving in deeper to see what City of Gears, its expansion, and other games are going to be able to bring you? Let us know your thoughts. Feel free to leave your comments here on the YouTube channel. You can of course find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Google Plus by searching Crits Happen, and at our homepage at critshappen.com. But until we see you next time, we hope you enjoy your time being a venture capitalist finishing the City of Gears. Keep rolling those dice, and we hope they're all bombs. I mean crits.